If humiliation had a boarding pass, mine was stamped in bold red letters the second my head slid onto his shoulder. And if fate had a sense of humor, it doubled down by making him my new professor 2 weeks later. The flight from Chicago to New York was supposed to be uneventful, a quick nap, some bad coffee, maybe a movie. Instead, I woke up to the mortifying reality that I'd been drooling against a stranger's shirt. Not just any stranger. The kind who looked like he stepped out of a GQ spread, with sharp features softened by the glow of the reading light, and eyes that hinted at storms I wasn't meant to understand. I muttered something incoherent, pulled back so fast I nearly dislocated my neck, and prayed the earth would open up beneath me. But instead of brushing me off, he smiled. It wasn't cruel, not mocking, just knowing. Like he was tucking that moment into his memory, filing it away for later. I should have known later would come sooner than I ever imagined. New York University in the fall was chaos and poetry all at once. The campus buzzing with energy, the leaves painting the sidewalks gold, and the air charged with new beginnings. I was a junior in literature, perpetually late, perpetually broke, perpetually trying to prove to myself I hadn't made a colossal mistake by chasing words instead of stability. Walking into my contemporary American literature class that first Monday, I expected a dull lecture and maybe a few cute classmates to distract me. What I didn't expect was him. He stood at the front of the lecture hall, sleeves rolled up, voice calm but magnetic, commanding without trying. And when his gaze swept the room, it stopped on me for just a fraction too long. "Professor Hale," he introduced himself, but my stomach dropped. Because I knew that voice. I knew that half-smile. It was him, my stranger from the flight, the man whose shoulder I had claimed without permission, the man who had watched me sleep like a fool, the man who now held the power to grade my papers and dictate my academic future. And the worst part? He remembered. After class, while students crowded around him with questions about readings and deadlines, I tried to bolt. Pretend the universe hadn't just played the cruelest joke of my life. But then, Mr. Carter. My name spoken low, smooth, deliberate. I froze. He waited until the crowd thinned, until it was just the two of us. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed, studying me with the kind of intensity that made me want to crawl out of my own skin. "You look well rested," he said. Heat surged up my neck. "You," his lips quirked, not quite a smile. "I trust the flight back was comfortable." It wasn't just memory. It was precision. He remembered everything. The drool, the head tilt, the way I had mumbled in my sleep about something embarrassing. God. Had I? My hands tightened around the strap of my backpack. "I didn't know you were your professor?" His eyebrow arched. "Neither did I. Life has a way of being unexpected." I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Instead, I muttered something like, "Yeah," and escaped before I could humiliate myself further. But avoidance only works for so long. Professor Hale wasn't the type you could ignore. His lectures were electric, pulling you in, making you forget to check your phone, making literature feel like something dangerous and alive. The classroom wasn't just walls and chairs. It was his stage. And every time his eyes flickered toward me, every time his voice dipped lower on a phrase, I felt it, like static crawling under my skin. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining the way his gaze lingered, that I was inventing the faint smile whenever I stumbled through an answer. But deep down I knew. He remembered, and Worsa enjoyed remembering. Weeks passed. I kept my head down, tried to stay invisible. But one evening, after a lecture that left my chest tight with too many emotions I didn't want to name, I found him waiting by the exit. "Walk with me," he said. Not a question. The autumn air was sharp, the city alive with horns and chatter, but somehow it felt like we were in our own bubble. He asked about my writing, my goals, my fears, and as stupidly, recklessly answered. Because with him it was impossible to lie. "You're harder on yourself than any critic could ever be," he observed quietly. I looked at him then, really looked, at the tired lines beneath his eyes, at the way he carried himself like someone who'd seen too much and felt too deeply. And something in me shifted. He wasn't just my professor. He wasn't just the stranger from the flight. He was someone who saw me, and that was terrifying. The tension between us grew, unspoken but undeniable. The kind you could cut with a knife. The kind that made every casual brush of his hand near mine feel like fire. I told myself it was nothing, that I couldn't afford to think of him that way. He was older. He had authority. He was untouchable. But then came the night in the library. Rain hammered against the tall windows, thunder rolling in the distance. I was buried in books, chasing a paper deadline, when his voice startled me. Still awake at this hour? He stepped into the dim light, jacket damp, glasses fogged. He looked more human than ever. Vulnerable, even. I tried to laugh it off. Deadlines don't care about sleep schedules. He chuckled, low and warm, then leaned closer. Too close. You should care, Carter. The way he said my name wasn't just a name anymore. It was a tether. And for one reckless moment, I wondered what it would feel like to fall asleep on his shoulder again, not by accident this time. The rain that night never stopped, but neither did the storm inside me. I avoided him for days after the library. Every time I saw his name on the syllabus, my heart lurched. Every time I walked into class, I told myself to focus on the lecture, not the man. But it was impossible. His voice threaded into me, line by line, until I couldn't tell if I was studying literature or the curve of his mouth when he quoted Whitman. And then it happened. The crack in the fragile dam I had built. He called me into his office one afternoon to discuss my latest essay. His door closed softly behind me, shutting out the world. His desk was stacked with papers, his glasses perched low, but his eyes were on me in a way that stripped me bare. You're brilliant, he said, but you hold back. You're afraid of what the truth might cost you. My laugh was shaky. That's rich, coming from you. His head tilted, studying me. And what truth do you think I'm afraid of? The words spilled out before I could stop them. That you feel the same thing I do. That whatever this hysterifies you as much as it terrifies me. The silence that followed was deafening. My heart pounded in my throat. I wanted to take it back, to run, but then you're not wrong, he said quietly. I froze. He stood, walked around the desk, and for a second I thought the ground would vanish beneath me. He stopped close enough that I could feel his breath. This isn't supposed to happen, he murmured. I shouldn't let it happen. But you want to, I whispered back. And God help me, he kissed me. It wasn't frantic, not rushed. It was the kind of kiss that demanded honesty, the kind that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and finally deciding to fall. My hands trembled as they clutched his shirt, his fingers curling into my hair, pulling me closer as if he'd been holding back for years instead of weeks. When we broke apart, the air between us was alive, buzzing, but heavy with consequences. We can't, he said, though his forehead still rested against mine. I know, I whispered, but neither of us moved. What followed wasn't easy. We danced around each other, caught between desire and restraint, between what we wanted and what the world demanded. Rumors began to swirl. Students noticed the way his gaze lingered, the way I avoided eye contact only to slip when it mattered most. One night, unable to bear the tension, I confronted him. Are we just pretending this doesn't exist? Because I can't, my voice cracked. I can't keep pretending. He looked wrecked, torn between duty and longing. You think I don't want to give in? Every time I see you, Carter, I have to remind myself of every reason why I shouldn't. You deserve someone who can love you without hiding. But what if I want you? I asked, raw and unguarded. What if it's only you? The silence that followed was an answer in itself. His hand hovered at his side, aching to touch, but he pulled back. I can't risk your future, he whispered, and I left, heart splintered, knowing he was protecting me but hating him for it all the same. The weeks that followed were torture. I poured myself into writing, bleeding onto the page in ways I never had before. He graded me fairly, too distant, and I thought maybe that was it. That the story we could have had ended before it began. But then came the end of the semester, my last paper. I wrote it not as an assignment, but as a confession. About the flight, about the shoulder I fell asleep on, about the professor who made me feel seen, about the impossibility of love and the cruelty of silence. When I handed it in, my hands shook. I didn't expect him to respond. I didn't expect anything. But a week later, after grades were posted and the ties of student and professor were officially cut, I found an envelope in my campus mailbox. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper. If fate truly has a sense of humor, then maybe it will forgive us for what we couldn't say. Meet me at the cafe on Bleecker Street. Midnight, if you still want to. My heart raced as I read it over and over, barely believing. Midnight felt like forever away, but I went. The cafe was nearly empty when I pushed open the door. He sat by the window, a book untouched before him, looking both impossibly calm and unbearably nervous. When his eyes met mine, something broke loose inside me. I slid into the seat across from him. For a moment we just stared, words failing us. Then he reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "I've been a coward," he admitted. "I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself. From how much you've come to mean to me." Tears pricked at my eyes. I mean, he interrupted gently, "that if you still want me, I don't care about the rules anymore. The semester's over. You're not my student now. And I can't keep pretending I don't." His voice cracked, but his grip on my hand tightened. "I don't love you." The world narrowed to that moment, to the way his voice trembled, to the honesty etched in every line of his face. I smiled through the tears. "Good, because I love you too." He leaned across the table and kissed me, and it felt nothing like that first hesitant kiss in his office. This one was freedom, was promise, was everything we had fought against finally breaking loose. The cafe lights glowed warm around us, the city humming outside, but none of it mattered. For the first time, there was no hiding, no fear, just us. Time passed, and with it, the sharp edges of our beginning softened. It wasn't easy. People talked, judgments lingered, but we built something real piece by piece. He wasn't just my professor anymore. He was my partner, my equal, my safe place. Sometimes, late at night, we would laugh about that flight, about how something so small, so ridiculous, had changed everything. "You ruined my shirt, you know," he'd tease, brushing his fingers through my hair. "And you ruined my life." I'd shoot back with a grin. In the best possible way. He'd kiss me then, slow and certain, and I'd think about how fate really did have a sense of humor. Because I had fallen asleep on a stranger's shoulder and woken up to the love of my life. And if I've learned anything, it's this: love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, in the hum of airplane engines, in the comfort of a borrowed shoulder. Sometimes it terrifies us, sometimes it costs us. But when it's real, when it's undeniable, it's worth every risk. Because in the end, love isn't about rules or timing or perfection. It's about finding that one person whose memory you never want to forget. And for me, that person will always be him. Always. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.